What do you trust? So, a lot of what we know, we learn from others. While social learning can be a shortcut to knowledge, standing on the shoulders of giants, it introduces a new challenge. Who do you trust? Other people can be misinformed, opinionated, unreliable, or worse, deliberately misleading. Many studies have shown that young children are highly selective over whom they learn from. Schmid et al. 2024. And thus reduce the chances that they pay attention to unreliable information in the first place. Children prefer to learn from those who are accurate, for example, selectively engaging with people who label objects correctly. Burge et al. 2008. Children prefer to learn from those who are reliable, for example, selectively engaging with people who behave consistently over time. Schmid et al. 2010. Children prefer to learn from those who are adequately informed, for example, selectively engaging with people who have access to relevant information. Russell, Layard, and Birch, 2011. Children prefer to learn from people who appear confident, but they also keep track of how well a person's confidence has matched with their knowledge and accuracy in the past. And they avoid learning new information from people who have a history of being overconfident. Birch et al. 2020. Children prefer to learn from people who receive more attention from other learners, such as those who are high status or prestigious, selectively engaging with the more skillful peers and avoid attending the less skillful ones. Ronford et al. 2018. Key point. Children are discerning learners, preferring to trust people who are accurate, reliable, skillful, well-informed, prestigious, and appropriately confident. Instruction. No other species can learn so much or acquire such a variety of information from others as the human children do. But it is also true that no other species goes to such lengths to provide as many opportunities for their children to learn. Every known society makes a huge investment in educating their young about their culture. Educating doesn't just mean the teaching that takes place in formal school environments, which is relatively recent invention and something that is far from being universal experience today. Worldwide, children participation in primary school is around 70%, United Nations 2018. Here we are talking about something more fundamental and widespread, whereby children in collaboration with their caregivers and peers interact in ways that ensure the transmission of cultural practices and belief across generations. In this way, teaching works together with imitation to preserve cultural knowledge, increasing the potential for innovation or modification to accumulate from one generation to the next. Caregivers have a special motivation to teach children because along the promoting their health and well-being, most parents want their children to grow up into culturally fluent adults, able to speak the language, familiar with the rites, rituals, folklores, religion, dress jokes, and music of their group, and able to take advantage of accumulated and medical, ecological, and technical know-how of their ancestors. While the motivation to imitate and instruct might be universal, there is a substantial cross-cultural and historical variation in exactly how this takes place. League and Harris, 2016. Caregivers in different cultures respond differently to infants' emotional displays and speak or interact with infants differently, variously preferring vocal, visual, and physical means of communication. In one-on-one interactions, caregivers from the USA typically rely heavily on language, asking more questions, encouraging planning, and providing high levels of verbal praise, encouragement, and scaffolding, for instance, leaving a jigsaw piece adjacent to its correct location. Clark and Bernicott, 2008. While this model of caregiver-child interaction is familiar to those in the West, it is arguably a relatively recent development reflecting the structure of formal education institutions and the large body of abstract knowledge and skills children are expected to master, e.g. literacy and numeracy. Interestingly, pushback against this kind of highly supervised learning has begun to emerge in these same societies, most notably within the free-range parenting movement, which argues that this approach negatively impacts children's national tendency for self-directed discovery, exploration, and independence. Skinazy, 2021. By contrast, in Vanuatu, a South Pacific chain of islands, caregivers use substantially more non-verbal forms of communication, such as gesture and physical touch, and children often learn to close observation of adults as they go about their business without being directly addressed or involved. Little, et al., 2016. In nearby Fiji, the kind of direct active teaching the American parents typically use is also relatively rare compared to the less intensive and costly form of teaching, such as teaching by social tolerance or allowing children to be bystanders and to observe behaviors that they may need to learn. The cross-cultural variation we see in different teaching styles is influenced by a range of factors, including parental beliefs about children's ability to teach themselves through observational learning, whether children of a given age have anything interesting to say, and therefore whether they are worth addressing, and the presence of formal education and expectations about entering the workforce. For example, children living in communities that rely on labour-intensive agriculture are expected to assist adults from the early age in cooking, planting, harvesting crops, and helping with the childcare of younger siblings. Laguerre, 2017. Costa and colleagues have observed how 441 parents interacted with their 2-year-olds at mealtimes in 5 diverse cultural contexts: rural Brazil and Ecuador and urban Argentina. Germany and Japan, 2022, they found that parents from all backgrounds mainly relied on a set of 6 teaching behaviors. Prompts to do, prompts to stop, communications of knowledge, demonstrations, providing choice, and negative feedback. But that the frequency of each behavior varied from site to site. In the face of cross-cultural diversity, for the fact that in many, if not most, cases, children develop into culturally competent adult members of their communities, speak the language, internalize the norms, share the beliefs, underlines how incredibly adaptable children are at learning. Humans are some of the most behaviorally flexible of all animals, with the plasticity being greatest in infancy and declining with age, meaning that childhood is a critical period of cultural apprenticeship. Regardless of cross-cultural variation, all instructions and learning benefits from the kind of mental mind reading and sharing of intentions that humans the world over seem to excel at. Dyadic and triadic interactions shared intentionally and of a theory of mind, chapter 3, making teaching and learning more efficient, understanding what a tutor can see or grasping what they want you to do helps learners work out where they are supposed to direct their attention. Understanding what a learner already knows and believes helps tutors pitch their instructions at the right level. This effect is not just limited to adult instructors. 3 to 5 years old children with high level of theory of mind were found to be more effective teachers of other children than children with those whose theory of mind abilities were less developed. Davis, Unger, and Carlson, 2008. Key point. While the motivation to imitate and instruct might be universal, there is a cross-cultural and historic variation in exactly how such imitation and instructions take place. So instruction can be helpful, but it can ever get in the way of children's learning. There is evidence to suggest it can, especially when it undermines children's natural tendency for discovery, creativity, play, and innovation. Psychologist Elizabeth Bonowitz and her colleagues looked at how 4-year-olds learned about new toy, and that for 4 tubes, Bonowitz et al. 2011. For one group of children, the experimenter said, "I just found this toy." As she brought out the toy, she pulled the first tube as if by accident, and it squeaked. She acted surprised. "Huh? Did you see that? Let me try to do that." And pulled the tube again to make it squeak a second time. With the other group of children, the experiment acted more like a teacher. She said, "I'm going to show you how my toy works. Watch this." She has deliberately made the tube squeak. Then she left both groups of children alone to play with the toy. What the children didn't know was that the other tubes were interesting as well. If you pulled on one tube, it squeaked. If you looked inside another tube, you found a hidden mirror, and so on. Unsurprisingly, the children in both groups pulled on the first tube, made it squeak. More interestingly, the children in the first group played with the toy for longer and discovered more of its hidden features than the second group in the case. And in other studies showing similar results, direct instruction from the teacher made the children less curious and less likely to discover new information. Bushbaum et al. 2011. Key points. Direct instruction is a double-edged sword. It can guide children to specific answers more quickly, but it can make them less likely to discover new information and draw unexpected conclusions. Talking point. We have looked at different child-parent interaction styles, e.g. contrasting Vanuatu, Fiji, and the USA. And in doing so, we touched on a conversational topic, parenting, putting aside the latest debates in parenting how-to manuals. We can make a more general and less contentious point across different societies, caregivers, child interaction styles adapted to the values and norms of the societies. They are embedded in societies while acquiring a large body of abstract knowledge and skills is valued, then it is understandable that caregivers would structure their interactions with this end goal in mind. For example, becoming literate and numerate is a measure of success in most Western societies and requires a lengthy period of direct supervision, relying heavily on language and high levels of feedback and encouragement. By contrast, in societies where self-reliance in high-valued caregiver-child interactions will be structured differently, having the end goal in mind. For example, in a forager society, autonomy is crucial in an environment where a person needs to look for food each day. Caregiver scaffolds this independence by intervening less children's actions and by giving fewer direction instructions. In the traditional cultures of the Marquess Islands of French Polynesia. By the time children are 18 to 24 months old, mothers are often pregnant with another child. Consequently, toddlers are expected to meet more of their own emotional needs, and members of these communities reinforce this by valuing signs of personal autonomy, for example, standing up to adult authority. Martini and Kirkpatrick, 1992. And of course, culture themselves changes what they value over time. Sachs recorded how introducing a market economy into remote villages in Papua New Guinea led to the transition from them using a simple numeric system based on counting body parts, e.g. touching the nose equals 14, to more abstract system familiar to those in the West, 2012. Almost overnight, this changed the everyday experience for a whole generation of children because they were now living in a culture that valued a more abstract number system, and they were also now expected to learn it. Summary: children are highly affected, motivated, activated, and playful learners, balancing the need of exploring the world around them and exploring what they have learned. Children pay particular attention to inconsistent or unexpected outcomes that provide new information about the way the world works. Children's explanatory learning is well suited to learning about cause and effect, and to using the knowledge to predict how things will behave in the world. Children can transfer what they have learned in one context to another, generalizing the systematic and evidence-based ways. Play and pretend play help children practice the physical and cognitive skills they will need later on in life. Young children appreciate the difference between fantasy and reality and are often skeptical and unlikely things that and events are real. However, they can be encouraged towards supernatural thinking if the belief is shared by others. Children's accurate imitation of behavior allows culture to be passed from one generation to the next. Children are discerning learners, preferring to trust people who are accurate, reliable, skillful, well-informed, prestigious, and appropriately confident. While the motivation to imitate and instruct might be universal, there is cross-cultural, historic variations in exactly how such imitation and instructions take place. Direct instruction is a double-edged sword. It can guide children to a specific answer more quickly, but it can make them less likely to discover new information and to draw unexpected conclusions.